Every day, chat and chart live during the New York session. Here, real traders share the raw truth, their mindset, technical analysis, and execution. This is where real traders show their skill set. Welcome to Tradin TV. This is your stage to shine.
How's everybody doing? Hope everybody's had an eventful week. I'm not going to really be checking the chat because I only have one screen right now. So let's go over the dollar index. Obviously, we ran below that sell side liquidity last week, and then we got this very large run higher, which I wasn't expecting, honestly, because I'm still overall bearish on the dollar. But we do have the monthly close coming up in 4 days. So just the fact that the dollar ran higher does not necessarily mean that this trend is changing yet. Really, we could be putting in a lower high and lower low, and then maybe next month we resume the downtrend. So kind of just going into the daily chart, all right? We had this balance price range or fair value gap, right? If you saw either one, you would have seen that we got a break above that level, and then this retracement in here. I thought that we were going to trade back through it, but obviously the market had other plans. We pushed away from that level aggressively, and then yesterday continued higher. So do we want to continue higher, cleaning out more of this buy-side liquidity? I'm not 100% sure. I guess we'll have to just kind of wait and see what happens. Right now it's Friday, so not really anticipating too much movement to the upside. Overall, when I look at all these markets, a lot of them are really just still stuck in a range, right? So dating all the way back till May, right? Or even, May, basically this market hasn't really gone anywhere, right? We've had, moving higher, moving lower, but overall we're stuck in this very, very large range. New Zealand dollar seeing some weakness. Aussie dollar seeing some weakness as well. Dollar CAD seeing some strength. So if I take a look at NASDAQ, though, these levels in here definitely are of interest to me. So yesterday we traded down into this daily fair value gap. We got a decent rejection. And right now we are pushing away from that level. And I do want to see if this 4-hour closure kind of pushes higher. So we do have equal highs all the way up here on NASDAQ. So we'll see if, these markets here continue higher. I mean, in my opinion, the path of least resistance is higher, just based off of yesterday's wick. And we've had 3 consecutive bearish days. I'm expecting this market to just continue higher. So we do have news out in half an hour. And I honestly might not stay on this stream too long, guys, because I have things to do. But NASDAQ, we did take out the Asian range low. Right now, we might be retracing down into this order block. We did have a sell side imbalance here, but you guys can very clearly see that we've traded through that level. So maybe this acts as an inverted fair value gap before trading higher. But yeah, after yesterday's price action, I just feel like this market might have a hard time trading lower. Now, ideally, this daily candle flips bullish, maybe closes bullish, and then we see continuation to the upside leading into next week. I mean, if I just take a look at this weekly chart, all right, we basically traded down towards this previous week's high, and we've kind of rejected that level. So overall, this market is still in an uptrend, even though we've had 3 very bearish days. In an uptrend, that's usually what you're looking for. You're looking for these bearish days to provide you the best opportunity to position yourself long. Okay, you're trying to find these dips where you're trying to get positioned long, right, after taking out liquidity or trading into inefficiency. So we traded into a very large inefficiency. Now we're just waiting to see if there's any type of response away from this level. And right now, this hourly candle does not have a wick, so maybe this is just power of 3 trading lower ahead of, at the start of the hourly candle. So I don't know if I really have too much to talk about. My views on gold. We did trade down into a daily fair value gap. So I still want to see if this market wants to trade higher from here. All right. So yesterday created an inside bar. We might get another inside bar unless this market pushes towards the high. Let's see. Do I use Dixie when I'm looking for daily bias? No, not really. Not on NQ at least. There's not really any correlation there. So NASDAQ, we took out Asian session lows. We have that hourly inverted fair value gap. And ideally, I just want to see this market continue to push higher. What do I think about the euro? Yeah, we had a very large pin bar. This traded almost to 50% of the wick, and then we traded lower. But overall, right, we're still stuck in this range. Do I think it's going to go to the range low, or do I think it's going to go to the range high? You know, I don't have a very strong feeling about that at the moment. But overall, when I take a look at like the monthly and the quarterly charts, right, this monthly, even though we've taken out buy side liquidity, it's still going to close with a higher low and a higher high compared to the previous month. So even if this candle closes bearish, there's still the ability for this market to trade higher. Do I feel very confident about the trade right now? No. You know, now if this market starts to push higher away from this low that we just took out, then maybe I'll have a stronger opinion. I honestly wanted to see it trade from here. So let me just remove this. I had a strong feeling that we were going to continue higher after we got these two daily candles. And then the next day kind of just completely erased that idea. So I took a loss on that one specific setup. It's not a big deal though. You know, once this trade gets invalidated though, I'm basically waiting because I don't have downside targets. I'm not bearish on this market. And overall, you know, I basically am just waiting until I get more information. All right. But I do have a pretty strong feeling about NASDAQ, or at least I would like to have a strong feeling about NASDAQ because we have this level up here and we have all of this liquidity that's been built up throughout the week. So it'd be great on a Friday to see that TGIF move trading back higher, right? And then setting up to make a run on all-time highs maybe next week or the following week. Based on the 3-month time frame, yeah. So when I look at my 3-month time frame, right, this market is still bullish. This quarter could print bearish though, and it's about to close in 4 days. So even if it closes bearish, maybe that next quarter opens, maybe we trade towards the low and then start to make our push higher. All right, that's kind of what we need to anticipate. NASDAQ is just pumping higher. How do I take trades on NASDAQ outside of kill zone hours? Well, it depends. If you are a swing trader, you just trade smaller size, right? That's how you get comfortable trading overnight and holding trades. PCE news? What about it? You shouldn't be nervous trading news, okay? The only news events that you guys should be nervous trading is FOMC rate announcement, NFP, and CPI. It depends on what type of trader you are. If you're a very intraday, short-term trader, then maybe worry about news. But think about all those big traders that are swing traders, right? Do you think they're really managing their position every time a red news folder comes out? No, they're not. Okay. If they're planning to hold their position for 2 to 3 months, do you think they're really managing their trade every single time a red news folder comes out? No. Where would I set my TP? You know, maybe just Asian range highs from yesterday could be your first take profit. Maybe Wednesday's high, or maybe you want to swing it all the way to all-time highs. You know, I can't answer that for you. That's something that you guys have to figure out on your own. So, again, I don't have a strong opinion of where currencies are going. I did not expect the dollar to rally as hard as it has. So I guess we'll see where we go on the news. But for me, I'm leaning higher. That to me is the path of least resistance, in my opinion. All right, because we already have this very long wick. And this is a 12-hour chart, by the way. But overall, yesterday was very, very choppy. A lot of liquidity being generated on both sides of the market. Is there a platform for paper trading futures? Yeah, you could paper trade directly on TradingView. How many points is my SL? Well, it depends on the market structure. You know, if the market is like this, right, and your stop loss has to be really wide, you just have to trade a smaller size. That doesn't mean, like, if I'm normally take a 50 tick stop, that I use a 50 tick stop, because a 50 tick stop yesterday wouldn't make any sense. Like, where would the stop loss go? It wouldn't even be above or below a candle. You just have these massive candles. So you have to position size accordingly. But yeah, for me overall, I want to see NASDAQ push higher. I think it's consolidated long enough. You know, I think it'd be unfortunate if it continued lower because we have all this liquidity up here. And I don't like shorting these markets, to be honest. Maybe there's going to be a TGIF on, the euro or the pound. I mean, we've already taken out sell side liquidity, right? So we have these old lows back here, and we've already closed back above them. So, I guess what is the path of least resistance? For me, ideally is higher. But I'm okay waiting and getting some more price action before trying to lean long again. Because right now, like when I look at these markets, this is very choppy since, all the way back in August. I haven't really found great setups in this market. And, that's a lesson to be learned when you're looking at these charts is that, not every market is going to be tradable every month of the year. If you're struggling in one specific market, maybe go to another market that's a lot cleaner. Because if you're like a one-trick pony and you only trade one market, what do you do if you're let's say if you take advantage of very large trends and very large expansion moves, and then the one specific market that you trade goes through a very extended period of sideways price action, you're not going to have a good time, right? You're not going to be trading well. Your mental capital is going to be down the drain. So instead of doing that, right, find another market that makes a whole lot of sense to you. The moves are clean. There's reason behind why a market is moving. And just trade that and get used to it. Because to me, all these charts to me are the same. They all move the same. All these time frames are the same. Whether I'm looking at gold, whether I'm looking at NASDAQ, whether I'm looking at euro, I can always look at a quarterly time frame, a monthly time frame, weekly, daily, 4-hour, whatever. And all of it is based off of price action. All right, open, high, low, close. All right, if I'm trying to position myself long on a specific day, I'm trying to buy it at or below the open. So let's just say if this daily candle closes bullish, where's the best place to be long on this specific daily candle? It's going to be somewhere down in here, inside of the wick, right? Because let's say if news comes out and this market just continues pushing higher. If you already missed the pricing that's below the open, right, you're not getting the best risk reward. So you can day trade a daily candle, right? I know it sounds weird, but you can do it, all right? Because it doesn't matter what time frame you're on, right? This price over here, if I go to a 1-minute chart, it's the same price, right? This price is the same whether I'm looking at a daily chart, whether I'm looking at a 4-hour chart, whether I'm looking at a 1-minute chart. It's all the same price, right? The candlestick is just giving you different data. Let's see if we got any questions here. How do I feel about YM right now? YM is still in this uptrend. Same thing with ES and NQ, right? We're still creating higher lows and higher highs. So this is higher low, right? Do I expect this to go down here and take out that low? No, ideally it doesn't, and then we trade to the all-time high again, right? Because I'm trying to trade with the trend. I'm not trying to pick a top. And until we break market structure to the downside, which we haven't done, right? So I reviewed this in my group already. In order for us to get a market structure shift, we need to have a swing point be broken. Okay, none of these daily candles are swing points. Okay, none of them. Because you need a higher low on either side of the candle. The last swing low that was created was all the way back here. Okay, so we would need to lose this low in order for us to shift market structure. All right, so until we lose that low, I'm just trying to position myself long continuously. I'm not looking at any spam comments, guys. How do I mark my standard deviations? It's just an indicator. got news out in 10 minutes. Am I in a trade now? So this is going to be interesting if maybe we get above this bearish fair value gap. All right, this is a good question. And market structure is bearish in the hourly and 4 hour, but bullish on the daily. What do? I always lean on the side of the higher time frame. Always. Because that low time frame move, you know, it's just the retracement inside of the higher time frame. So when a market is going lower on a lower time frame, but I'm bullish on a higher time frame, that's how I filter out trading. I'm not always in a trade. All right, I'm not trading against the high time frame. I'm just waiting. Is there a way to connect FTMO account to TradingView? I don't believe so. Do I use a 15-second chart? No. I'm mainly trading off of like an hourly, 15-minute, 4-hour daily. So again, we're inside of the daily fair value gap. We have this inverted fair value gap below us. You know, ideally, we don't have to retrace back to the midnight open because we've already taken out the Asian range low. So a lot of you guys are asking questions that you should be able to answer on your own. Use your brain, right? The internet is a vast resource. You know, stop loss placement is a personal thing. I can tell you how to place my stop losses, but you have to go in the markets and learn how to do this on your own. Right? Same thing with position size. Same thing with everything, honestly. YM looks pretty strong right now. ES, you know, he spent a bit of consolidation trading to this wick. What did I do with my first big payout? I invested it and bought more funded accounts. I didn't do anything stupid with it. So if this trades higher, maybe, I don't know, towards this intraday high here, and then this intraday high here, just the way that this market has traded lower, there's a lot of buy side liquidity to be taken, right? Because it's built up, and we haven't taken out any of these highs. And then all the way at the very high of this is equal highs. So in my opinion, all this move lower is really just a retracement inside of this overall trend. And this is a very steep correction that we've seen this week, right? But usually during steep corrections, right, that's usually when we start building somewhat of a base, and then we just start drifting higher, right? Do I still trade Forex? I do, but only when it's clear. Right? When you look at dollar and euro, look at these daily time frames. Is this clear? Is this clear at all? This has been very sloppy and messy. Outside of a couple days, right? I'm looking for price action that looks more like this. Look at this right now. This looks awful. Have I made more from trading or selling courses? Trading by a landslide. I made $3 million in 3 months. So, you know, I guess you could do the math in your head from trading. When I decided to add to my trade, do I wait to be 1 hour profit? Yeah, typically I wait to be 1 hour in profit. Because the thing is, I want to be able to move my stop loss to a point that makes sense. And usually I'm not moving my stop loss until I'm up, 1 to 2 R. Okay, so you should not be adding risk just randomly. How long did it take me to adapt from FX to futures? Probably 6 months. I think when I got into futures, I was always trading early. Like I would always find myself in trades ahead of the open, and just doing dumb things. This is probably a setup I would take ahead of the open though, just because I think the swing targets for the upside, really are there. So maybe you want to have your stop loss, as long as the news coming out doesn't like completely invalidate this idea. Maybe your stop loss all the way down here. I know it's a very large stop loss, but it's something you just have to deal with, especially with volatile markets. Yeah, 3 mil all funded accounts with Apex. I've made over 4.5 across all the other prop firms. So almost 3 million with Apex, like 1.5 with all the other prop firms, futures and Forex. So news just came out. And really coming into today, I'm looking at all this price action from yesterday. Okay, so after we see all this choppy sideways price action inside of the daily fair value gap, what are the odds of this market continuing lower? I think that's our path of most resistance. Okay, so when I look at these upside targets, this just seems way clearer to me, right? We have all this liquidity that's being built up. And when I look at the daily candle, right, I'm trying to position myself inside of the wick, right? Like just like I mentioned, the best trade that you're going to have is inside of the wick. Now, if this daily candle closes bullish, I'm going to be leaning long for days because I don't think it's going to get all the way up here today. That would be an extremely aggressive move if it does. Let's see. Any questions? So, like, this is, in my opinion, prime to set up. Let's say if this market just continues pushing higher. Ideally, next week, we get a small move lower to start the week, and then it just rips higher again, right? If you're a short-term trader, maybe you want to take something off here. But in my opinion, this market's got a lot of room to run higher. Let's see any comments. Guys, I gotta add slow-mo to the chat because you guys keep asking the same questions over and over and over again. Let me ask you a question. Does it matter if I'm in the trade or not? I walked you through the whole thought process beforehand. Okay, I'm not here to provide signals. I'm here to walk you through the markets. The reasoning why I was leaning long and not short heading into the news. This market will have a very hard time. Let's say if this market doesn't just completely die through the rest of the day, it's going to have a hard time getting through this wick down here. So let's say if this candle closes bullish today, maybe it's a small bullish candle for the day. Next week, I would just assume that this market is going to just continue higher from this daily fair value gap. That's what I'm looking for. And like I mentioned, we already took out the Asian range low. Okay, so after taking out that Asian range low, and then we pushed through this bearish fair value gap. So, in my mind, I'm like, if I'm bearish, why would the market do this? Why would it have a bearish fair value gap and then right ahead of the news, trade right through that? Right? To me, that's full steam ahead, bullish. And, these index markets are not engineered to go lower. They're engineered to go up and to the right historically. So let's say if you're not a bearish trader and you don't short the market, all you're trying to do is wait for these bearish movements to stop happening. Wait for a market structure shift and then position yourself long. And that's all you have to do continuously, right? You don't have to do anything else. In a bullish market, all you're trying to do is wait, wait out those periods where the market's trading lower. So even if the market's trading lower, I'm not trading this. All right, unless I have a very strong indication of where the market's going to go to a downside target. But usually, in a bullish market, it's very hard to determine. Earlier this year, we had equal lows that we could target, but now, there's liquidity down there. But is it easy? Is it easy for it to go grab? Not really. Let's see. Do I use SMT? Yes. So the thing with my trading, if you guys have watched any of my videos, you're probably wondering, why does this guy teach so many different strategies or teach so many different concepts? Like, my trading is a toolbox, right? I have this very large toolbox where I've put a lot of knowledge in through the years. Okay, I've learned Fibonacci, I've learned fundamentals, I've learned order blocks, liquidity rates, trend lines. I've learned trend lines. I've learned single candlestick patterns like the engulfing bar, the pin bar, so many different things. Weekly profiles, right? I put all these things into my toolbox, and I tend to use only some of them here and there. I don't pull out every single tool on every single trade. Okay, I only look for certain things on specific trades. This trade here, it could have been as easy as a fair value gap. Okay, this trade is as easy as a fair value gap, seeing a very large wick to the downside, and then you're trying to play power of three. So power of three is you're trying to buy it below the open. That's all you're trying to do. You're not trying to do anything else. If you see other things, that's great. You don't need anything else, though. And the whole point, people might flip out about this, but at the end of the day, all a market is a squiggly line that goes up and down, right? So you have time and you have price. It's just a squiggly line that goes up and down, and all it's doing is, engineering liquidity, taking people out of the market, and you don't have any control of what this market does once you're in a trade, though, right? You got no control over it. What's the outlook? Guys, I already walked. If you guys missed it, I already walked through the whole thing. I walked through the whole thing, why I was bullish on NASDAQ and why I'm flat on currencies. All right. So if you missed it, you can go back and rewatch it, but I feel like I don't need to reiterate it again. So let's just say if this candle here, this 12-hour candle, closes bullish in the next 8 hours, right? We're just looking for those small retracements. Maybe you get stopped out on a couple of them because the market does go sideways sometimes, and you're trying to position yourself before going long, right? But in my opinion, we will make it back to these all-time highs back here, okay? Because in my opinion, that liquidity is just, I don't know, it's like screaming my name, all right? But what a move, what a move, what a move. You can guess if you think I'm in this trade or not, but that's not the important part. The important part is you understanding why I would lean long on a specific trade, right? Why does it make sense to be long on a market? I mean, overall, it makes sense to be long on index markets, just in general, right? There are very, very small windows where you can short the market, okay? Unless you're like a super intraday trader, those small windows don't last very long because the market typically just goes up and to the right, guys? If a name is underperforming in the index, they just remove it from the index and replace it with something else. So overall, the weighting of an index, right? If something is just underperforming, they're just going to replace it with another asset, another name. So wouldn't this be interesting? Now, I'm not saying this is going to do this today, but let's just use your imagination. What if this weekly candle, all of a sudden on Friday, turns bullish, right? Everybody that was trying to short this market throughout the week, right? They're getting stopped out of their positions because they're holding it too long. But anybody that's accumulating long is trying to do so at a discount. Okay, they're buying it below the wick or below the opening price, inside of the wick. All right. Now, the way that this market is pushed up, I wouldn't look for any shorts, to be honest, because this is really our displacement leg. Now, it might go sideways for a bit, but ideally it doesn't have to come all the way back down here. That would not be good for longs. But guys, I'm not gonna stay on here too much longer. I gotta run a little bit. So let me just see if there's any questions I can answer. Why do I not trade the DAX? I'm already trading a fair amount of markets. I'm trying not to trade too many, to be honest. Previous daily high target. Yeah, you could aim for the previous daily high, in my opinion. It might not get there, but maybe you want to trim something already, because we have punched above this short-term liquidity here. I think this market still has a lot of room to run just based on this, what we're seeing right now. And what I'm going to be looking for next week is this liquidity all the way up here. All right. I would cover 4x more, but these markets just don't have my interest right now. All right. When I look at the dollar, this is just a mess. To me, this is a mess. All right. I'm looking for conditions that are like this. Right. Very clean, trending in one direction. Right. When I look at all this price action, there's a very clear direction that this market is going. When I look at this current price action, I don't know what the hell's going on over here. This to me is not clean whatsoever. Okay. So it's just something I'm avoiding. Okay. Are you trading? Am I trading live every day? No, I trade live with my group, but I am not trading live publicly. I've been trading for nearly 15 years, and I don't give my time away for free. And I could already tell that I'm honestly not gonna waste too much time with some of the guys in here asking questions that they can probably answer on their own, right? Because time is precious. You guys can, use your brains. Use your brains when you're asking questions that are easily answerable on your own. You can answer your own questions. Like, where should I place my stop loss? You shouldn't need to ask somebody else where to place your stop loss. If you're doing that, you should not be trading, okay? You have to learn this on your own. Nobody's gonna handhold you and babysit you and trade for you live and make you millions of dollars. All right. I'd put blood, sweat, and tears into this craft, just like many of you guys have to. There's no shortcut to the hard work. All right. So you have to be able to, put everything aside and dedicate your time to this craft. Learn the nuances of it. Understand your psychology and how it affects your trading performance. What you should be looking for day to day. How do you stay disciplined when you're trading? Okay, not many people know how to stay disciplined when they're trading. They just take a trade, they take a massive loss, and then all of a sudden they find themselves in trades that they should not be in, right? Doing stupid things that they should not be doing. And then at the end of the day, they wonder why their accounts are blown up. Right? It's just the harsh truth. So with that being said, guys, I'm going to hop off here. Keep it short and sweet here. If you were long intraday, maybe you want to trim something because we still have the equity open coming up. I am personally still bullish on this market, and I want to see it continue higher. But maybe it's not going to go there till next week. I don't know. So we shall see. Right now, I want to see this market really reject and respect this daily fair value gap. If it does, and we get a bullish daily candle, well, I'll just expect the following days to be bullish. All right. So I hope you guys have a great weekend, and I'll see you guys all next week.